Welcome to the North Metro Mayors Association Legislative Candidate Forum. Thank you all for joining us tonight. My name is Lori Higgins. I'm the moderator for this evening's forum, as well as the president of the Metro North Chamber of Commerce, a community partner in the North Metro Mayors Association. The North Metro Mayors Association was created in 1987 as a nonpartisan organization advocating for issues and opportunities of importance to the North suburban region of the Twin Cities. Our goal in sponsoring tonight's Legislative Candidate Forum is to provide residents with an opportunity to learn about the candidates' ideas and positions on issues that we believe are important to the future of our communities in the North Metro region. We will pose 4 prepared questions. Responses will be in rotating order with set time limits on their answers. I note that these limits are maximums and not minimums. We regret that we cannot cover all issues of interest tonight due to time constraints. I am pleased to announce the candidates with us tonight for House District 35B. We have Steve Pape and Carrie Rayrauer. Thank you both for being here for tonight's forum. Each candidate will now have 2 minutes for an introductory statement, and then we will get started with the questions. A coin toss determined Ms. Rayrauer would go first.
Thank you. Thank you to the North Metro Mayors Association for working together respectfully, serving our larger community, and growing our regional economy. And thank you for holding the forum tonight. It's a great way to help our voters learn more about the two of us. So I want to share with you, I grew up in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and my parents taught me the value of hard work at a very young age. As far back as I can even remember, I was washing dishes by hand for our family dinner, helping my dad with the family business. And at age 12, I had my own paper route, and by 16, I was bussing tables at Old Country Buffet, if you remember that restaurant. College brought me to Minnesota. I married my high school sweetheart, Dan, and the love of my life. And then we bought our first home here in Coon Rapids 24 years ago. We raised our daughters here, and we just moved our youngest one into college this week, so that was tough. And as a public school science teacher for my career, some things that I experienced, I saw big differences between the different districts I worked in. I saw major differences between well-funded districts and those that were underfunded. And when I was at St. Francis Middle School, for example, we had one counselor for over 1,000 students. And also at this time, sadly, I had my first student attempt suicide. This was a 12-year-old. And fortunately, they survived. And when it was time for them to come back to school, I wanted to make sure there was a re-entry plan in place. And I talked to all 4 support staff that we had. I talked to our counselor, our social worker, our assistant principal, and our principal. And not one of the 4 knew who this student was. So I knew I needed to make a bigger difference. And that is why I ran for the city council in 2020, won that seat, and that is now why I'm running for the Minnesota House, so I can make a difference for our community and our kids at the Capitol.
Thank you. Mr. Pape, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Yes, Steve Pape, and I'm running for the House District 35B in Eastern Coon Rapids, Southeastern Andover. I come from a rural Iowa farm background. So for me, working from dawn till dusk kind of seemed like a normal thing, and I've had that work ethic most of my life. When I was 17, I joined the Navy and decided to go see the world. By the time I was 21, I had visited 17 foreign countries. I served in the Cold War, I served in the Middle East, and I served a double tour in Vietnam. And so I have some experience there. After that, I decided, since I had been in the service, I had the GI Bill, and I was attracted to the University of Minnesota, and that is what brought me to Minnesota. And I can say that I'm now a retired design engineer. I do hold multiple patents and professional certifications. I took my engineering work seriously, and I really loved every minute of it. So right now, I'm coming out of retirement a second time. I'm now running a tree farm. I grow, sell, and move native Minnesota trees, and I truly enjoy that. So I'm new to politics. I've never run for elective office before, And I was motivated by my kids and grandkids, not that they pushed me into it, but that I looked at where we were going and I said, I can't leave it like this. I have to do better. My kids need me. And so I came back out. Anyway, you could sum up why I'm running 3 words. I like to say love, respect, and faith. I love my family. I love my country. And I respect all the people who came before me and gave us what we have today. And I have faith that I can go and do that justice, that I can continue to support the great country that we have.
Thank you. At this time, we will go to our prepared questions. This will be done in a rotating order with a rebuttal opportunity. There is a 2-minute time limit for the answer. After both candidates have answered, there will be a rebuttal opportunity for each candidate with a 45-second time limit. Ms. Rayrauer, what are the top 1 or 2 issues you hear while campaigning? And, if elected, what will you do to ensure that the 2025 legislature works in a collaborative way with the governor and the community to address those issues?
Thank you. This is a great question because I love that it's about what our residents are sharing with us. And what I'm hearing from our residents is 2 primary things: affordability and working together. First, affordability. This is about the rising costs of goods and services that we have going on. We have higher costs of groceries, healthcare, and housing, and we must make life more affordable for our residents. I will stand up to big corporations that are price gouging Minnesotans. I'll fight for making healthcare more affordable, reducing the cost of prescription drugs, and making sure that we cap costs of life-saving medications like asthma inhalers and EpiPens. I'll fight for affordable child care and make sure school breakfast and school lunch stay free for our kids. That helps you with your family's grocery bill. I'll fight to close loopholes that ensure our wealthy corporations pay their fair share in our taxes. And secondly, it's working together. What I hear from people is they're tired of politicians with extreme agendas and who cause problems rather than working together to solve problems. On the Coon Rapids City Council, we listen to each other very well, and even if we disagree on an issue, we always treat each other with respect. And because of this, we've worked together to solve and pass some great things. We've passed an energy action plan. We added a full-time social worker to our police department. We've expanded our recycling center. We've invested in a new water tower that replaced a failing water tower that we have in the city. We're transitioning to LED lighting in our city buildings and much more than that, of course. And I want to continue to serve this way at the Capitol to make sure that we work together and solve our toughest problems. And I will lead by listening to our residents, making sure I hear all of our perspectives, and then making thoughtful decisions that serve our community.
Thank you. I will repeat each question. Mr. Pape, what are the top 1 or 2 issues you hear while campaigning? And if elected, what will you do to ensure that the 2025 legislature works in a collaborative way with the governor and the community to address those issues?
Okay, I think the number 1 issue that I hear from people when I door knock is really the issue of expense and cost. Affordability is a good way to put it. They're getting crushed in the middle. They talk about the cost of property taxes and the steady rise. They talk about the cost of all the things related to like food. Everybody who's in the community has seen what's happened, even fast food restaurants. I remember just a few years ago, a cone was 99 cents and now it's $2.50. So we're seeing this everywhere. So what do you do about that? Well, the one thing you really can't get a handle at our level on inflation very well, because that's such a big issue. But what we can do is help people manage their costs in other ways. I think taxes is something we need to look at really carefully. A lot of people complain to me about taxes, and this came up particularly, I think, with the $10 billion tax bill that was lobbed in at the end of the legislative session. A lot of people were stunned. You know, where did the $17.5 billion go? Why did they add $10 billion more? And so people are really feeling the pressure, and there's a lot of frustration over the tax hikes. And so what I would like to do is take a look at what did we get done in terms of the taxes, and what can we do if we stepped back and looked at, for example, the waste, fraud, and abuse problem. $500 million of identified waste, fraud, and abuse, and we definitely have to go after that. So we've got to go look at where we're not spending the money wisely and what we can do better in terms of saving the taxpayers' money. And I think that gets to the crux of the problem. So, and as for collaboration, that's a could do better thing too. I think we really need to work better at both parties talking to each other more. And I don't think that's been happening well enough.
Thank you. And now an opportunity for a 45-second rebuttal, starting with Ms. Rayrauer.
Yes, so some of the things that cost families the most are what they're paying for health care and health insurance and what they're paying for child care. And I support working at the Capitol to fix those issues and make health care and child care more affordable. In addition, property taxes, we need to make sure that at the state level, the state is paying their fair share towards our public school systems, because what's been happening is because the state isn't putting in their portion, the local property taxes have been going up by our school districts going for property tax levies in order to just fund what they need to fund. I also support lowering taxes on our low-income folks, our middle-income folks, and our families. And we need to continue the child care tax credit that was passed in the last legislative session and increasing taxes on our wealthiest. Our top 1% in Minnesota make more than $10,000 a week, so they can contribute their fair share.
Thank you. Mr. Pape, would you like to provide a 45-second rebuttal?
Yes. When it comes to taxes, there's definitely a could do better there. For example, I don't think the taxes are always particularly fair to the lower income people in the community. When you look at things like vehicle registration tax increased by $788 million in the last session, retail delivery fee, a new tax, added $189 million. Gas tax going up $276 million, and there's a long list, another 0.75% on sales tax. These taxes disproportionately hurt low-income folks. These taxes, like gas tax, it's not a tax that affects the rich. So what I see is the people getting squeezed the worst under this new tax bill are people who are already in the greatest bind. And I think we need to go back and revisit that. I think we can do better with people who are really struggling with expenses.
Thank you. Question 2, Mr. Pape. Describe your view of local and regional transportation infrastructure needs. Do you believe additional state funding for transportation is necessary? If so, what sources of increased revenue would you consider supporting?
Okay, first of all, I think we actually have a pretty good system. But I do think that there are some problems hidden in the system that we need to address. And some of those problems are we produce funds to go build roads, and then we allow portions of those funds to be siphoned off to things that are not roads. For example, if you live out in Bemidji or if you live in Owatonna and you're paying the same tax as somebody like me or anyone in our community, and yet you say, wait a minute, but they're taking 40% of that gas tax and they're using that for transit down in the Southwest Metro. And they're like, how does that help me? And so you see, people see these inequities and they really want those inequities addressed. I don't believe that it should be an issue of 87 counties that all of a sudden you discover the revenue from 85 of them is going down to 2. And I think we have some equity issues here is what I would say.
Thank you. Ms. Rayrauer, describe your view of local and regional transportation infrastructure needs. Do you believe additional state funding for transportation is necessary? If so, what sources of increased revenue would you consider supporting?
Thank you. As your representative, I believe one of my primary roles, my primary job, is to learn about our community's infrastructure, to listen to our residents and our community leaders and find out what they feel our needs are, and then advocate for the funding for those at the Capitol. I support funding for separating railroad traffic from vehicle traffic all across our entire region. This separation speeds up emergency response times, which will also lead to improving our public safety. We need to ensure that the planned improvements that are for Highway 10 and Highway 65 continue as planned. That funding needs to continue to move forward. I also support funding for a full access interchange at East River Road and 610 in Coon Rapids. Right now it's a half interchange, and for many years now this has been a major corridor in our city. Our roads and bridges must be funded adequately to ensure the safety of our residents and ensure the stability of our local economy. What we've seen is, as we know that for example, Highway 10 is getting developed, we're starting to see lots of growth out in Ramsey. So these things go together. I support having a dedicated revenue stream for our roads and bridges and for our critical infrastructure so that we know that that funding is going to be there and that we can make sure that we maintain our critical infrastructure.
Thank you. And now an opportunity for a 45-second rebuttal, starting with Mr. Pape.
I do believe that there is what I would call an allocation issue. And I think if we can address that allocation issue, we can solve a lot of problems. I look at some of the taxes and how they're spent, and I get the feeling we could do better. And so I won't pick out a specific program, but I just mentioned a couple of them, for example, where we have taxes and the taxes aren't being spent what people thought they were being spent for. They're being reallocated, and I just think that we got to go back and take a look. If we have a road tax, if we have a gas tax to support roads and bridges, then we should use it for roads and bridges and not pair off whatever we want for other special projects. And I think that's the way we get into trouble when we allow scope creep in a project.
Thank you. Ms. Rayrauer, would you like to provide a 45-second rebuttal?
Our gas tax goes directly to roads and bridges, and we need to ensure that that funding stays exactly the way it is and that it only goes to roads and bridges.
Okay, thank you. Question 3, we'll begin with Ms. Rayrauer. This community is part of a global marketplace that competes for business and talent. What policies would you support to help retain and attract businesses and talent to the region?
Thank you. We do. We have a very thriving local economy and business community here in this region. As a city council member, I've had the very pleasant opportunity to see a large number of new businesses come into the region. I've also seen our major retail center continue to expand, and so we want that to continue to grow. At the state level, actually, what's really exciting is Minnesota was just recently ranked number 6 in the country for business. This is due to our workforce, our infrastructure, and the quality of life here in Minnesota. And so by investing in our state, we grow our economy. And I support the investments that we have made in infrastructure and things like job training, child care affordability, and broadband access. Because of this, it grows our economy and it puts us near the top here in Minnesota. I'll make sure local government aid and similar programs remain intact also, so that cities have the funding they need to maintain their city infrastructure. And you know, good infrastructure and good transportation improvements improve our economy and they improve our commerce. And when I'm out talking to residents at the doors, the things that they talk about why they moved here is things like our beautiful parks and trails, our safe neighborhoods, and our great schools for their kids. So since that has brought those people to our region, we want to make sure we continue to prioritize those things. We want to keep our local community and technical colleges supported, and that attracts people, students moving into our community from surrounding communities. We also want to strengthen our public schools. So because when young families are looking to buy a home, they're looking for a community that they know they can have top schools. And as your representative, I'll work tirelessly to support our public schools, ensure that class sizes are reduced, and our access to mental health resources is increased.
Thank you. Mr. Pape, this community is part of a global marketplace that competes for business and talent. What policies would you support to help retain and attract businesses and talent to this region?
I think to retain and attract businesses, you have to have a business environment that attracts the leaders of businesses. And that means the leaders obviously are people who are usually well-funded and they have options. And so what you want to do is make sure that when they start exercising options, that you haven't created a business environment that feels unfriendly. And there's a lot of discussion that I've heard from small business owners that the business environment is not especially friendly when it comes to how the state regulates it. So I see regulatory relief in many cases is justified. I believe tax relief for businesses would be a better use of how you want to retain and attract. And I also think that for attracting, we could do some creative things at a state level, which would be to like create enterprise business zones where there are special relief, there are special tax advantages to grow businesses in a certain area. And if you want to select areas where you want to really grow businesses, you have to do something that stands out. It can't be a little here, a little there, and make them think it's something worthwhile. And the bottom line is they have to be able to hire employees. So investing in young people, investing in students is always the right thing to do. You can't get around that. I would like to see our trade schools enhanced. I do believe that the trade schools could use newer, better equipment. I do believe that we are seeing a migration of young people into trades, and that's a good thing because you can't sell what you can't build. And if you don't have the facilities to build it, you're going to have a problem. And so we have to get down to how do we build things, how do we manufacture things, how do the trades support us, and how do we deliver goods, whether it's locally or globally.
Thank you. And now an opportunity for a 45-second rebuttal, starting with Ms. Rayrauer.
Great. So I want to go back to talking about public schools a little bit because one of the reasons why we do so well here in Minnesota and we're at the top for Fortune 500 companies is because of our educated workforce. And in order to have an educated workforce that starts with the foundation of our public schools, we had a Minnesota Miracle back in 1971 that prioritized state funding for our public schools. Since then, we have slowly moved away from that, and in 2003, we made a big backwards movement on that. And because of that, we see different districts have totally different funding and outcomes based on zip codes. And I think that our state has to fund public schools, so every kid in Minnesota has a fantastic education no matter what their zip code is.
Thank you. Mr. Pape, would you like to provide a 45-second rebuttal?
Oh, I don't need 45 seconds. I just agree with everything she said. No, seriously. It's common sense. We do need to invest in our schools. We do need to invest in students. And I think Carrie and I both are in alignment on that particular goal. I feel very much the same way. With 6 of my grandkids, actually 7 grandkids, currently enrolled in local public schools, I'm heavily invested in the school system. And I really believe that we need to give them what they need to become those productive employees of the future, to become the leaders of businesses. To position them to help take care of Grandma and Grandpa someday.
Great. Well, let's see how you both feel about question 4. We'll begin with Mr. Pape. Recently, legislation like the Missing Middle Housing Bill has been proposed at the state capitol, which would drastically restrict city zoning authority on certain housing issues while favoring state-mandated regulations. What role do you feel city government should play in determining local housing decisions?
I believe that government executed at a local level will always outperform government located at any higher level given the opportunity. I believe that when it comes to building local infrastructure, building local housing, the city is probably best equipped to deal with it. And I believe that when you give the authority away from the city and you try to come up with a one-size-fits-all, I think you come up with laws that don't make sense to somebody who lives in Owatonna, Brainerd, or Wilmer, and they look at it and they're like, what were they thinking? And so one size doesn't fit all when it comes to how you invest in this housing problem. I think there could be a lot of investment in how we look at the regulatory environment. It's really difficult to get permits and make it through all the regulations. But I do see housing being built. I happen to live in an area where there are hundreds of new homes surrounding where I live, and so I see it's happening. But I talk to the builders, and it really comes down to, are they going to see a reasonable return on investment? And when they start seeing that return go down, they start walking away from projects. And so we need to work with cities. I think city councils should have the final say in most things. There are some things that are state and regulatory, but I think the responsibility for most of what the cities want and need should go back to the city, and I believe the Metropolitan Commission should start letting go of some things and handing control back to the cities. I believe that you do need ascending levels of regulation, but it has to be well thought out and purposeful. And just simply saying, well, I want to control everything for the whole state because of this one situation right here in my district, it's not the right answer. It's not a one-size-fits-all environment. And I think that when regulations are executed at a local level, they're executed best.
Thank you. Ms. Rayrauer, recently, legislation like the Missing Middle Housing Bill has been proposed at the state capitol, which would drastically restrict city zoning authority on certain housing issues while favoring state-mandated regulations. What role do you feel city government should play in determining local housing decisions?
So city government should have the largest role in determining local housing. Cities are the primary determinants of their ordinances and their local zoning regulations. But the reason why bills like the Missing Middle Bill have shown up recently is because of the current and projected shortage we have in the number of housing units we have in our state. It's really becoming a critical issue, and it's affecting the affordability of housing here in our state. In order to prevent, this continued exponential, almost rapid rise of housing costs, we're going to have to build more housing. It's affected our rental rates, it's affected the cost of buying a home, and something has to be done. So one thing in February of this year, the City Council was presented to by the Anoka County, and Anoka County shared a housing market study with us. And from this study, it was crystal clear that the demand for new units, even right here in Coon Rapids, is very high. And it's especially high for rental units and for senior housing. So we're seeing this right at the city level, but it's also at the state level. But then what we have is in some of our suburban development areas, we're seeing extremely restrictive codes that are requiring things like 3-car garages and full brick fronts on houses. And this is making housing unaffordable for most Minnesotans. And it's really about balance. So I don't see this as one or the other. We have to have balance in what we're doing. We need to be able to have the voice of cities in their development, but we also need to find ways to make sure that housing keeps up with our growth. If we don't do that, we're going to have housing demand way far outweigh supply, and the costs continue to go up. So we need to preserve local control, but we also, I believe that the American dream should be able to be fully realized by anyone that works full-time, and they should be able to afford to buy a home for their family.
Thank you. And now an opportunity for a 45-second rebuttal, starting with Mr. Pape.
Okay. I sort of take issue with some of the thoughts there. I don't see the population growth continuing at a steady level. In fact, just last week, I heard Kamala Harris talk about the depopulation plan. And I can tell you the demographics are telling us that this population growth is not sustainable and will not be sustained. And therefore, let's not put the cart before the horse. I think it's prudent to control and plan where we build and what we build. But I think to believe that we are going to always see the level of growth that we have seen recently is not reasonable. I think we need to be careful on that one.
Thank you. Ms. Rayrauer, would you like to provide a 45-second rebuttal?
Well, we currently have a shortage here in Coon Rapids and in Minnesota, and this is why the housing costs are unaffordable. This is why rents are so high. We have less units than we need. You need to have enough of a supply so that there is competition and that the costs don't get out of control. We also need to be able to build starter homes that young families can afford. As I was saying, I think it's very important in Minnesota, and really in the nation, is that anyone should be able to have the American dream where if you're working full-time, you should be able to afford a starter home, buy a starter home, and raise your family there.
Thank you. This is the end of our questions for this forum. We will now go to the closing statements of our candidates. We are requesting 60 seconds max per candidate, and we will begin with Ms. Raybauer.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the North Metro Mayors Association for setting up this forum, and thank you for sharing this information with our voters. And thank you to all of you at home who are watching the forum. Keeping our democracy strong requires the engagement of all of our citizens, so I'm so happy that you're spending time watching this tonight, and thank you for getting out and voting. Today I shared a little bit about who I am with you, and I want you to know that I care about you, I care about your family, and I care about our community. I will put you first, not just in words, but also with actions and with my vote. As your representative, I will vote for things like easing the burden on your family's budget. I will vote to make health care more affordable, child care more affordable, and I will stand up to wealthy corporations to ensure that they pay their fair share. I want you to know I will come to work prepared and ready. I will do this work with respect. I will listen to you in all perspectives, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pape.
In closing, I would like to thank the Metro Mayors Forum for sponsoring this and putting it together. I do appreciate that. It's nice when people can participate in the political process from home, and this is a great way to do that. I'd like to say that I stand ready to serve the community and the state, and especially in the capacity of bringing back balance. That's a focus for me. The collaboration and the balance needs to be brought back, and I don't believe we're right there yet. I believe I'm qualified by virtue of my background, my education, and things I have done and commitments I've made. But just as importantly, I think I'm qualified as a husband, a father, a homeowner, somebody who's deeply invested in the community and who's been here for a long time. And I'll not only do the job, but I'll do it with honesty, integrity, and commitment. And I will always represent my constituents fairly when I go to the Capitol. And I ask for your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This brings us to the close of this forum. We would like to thank our candidates, the North Metro Mayors Association, and the City of Coon Rapids for making tonight's event possible. Please remember to vote on or before Tuesday, November 5th, 2024. Thank you.